Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Harel, and just to let you know, my good speaker is broke, so I'm gonna have to buy a new one. So hopefully this will be okay. And I'm recording just through the regular uh, audio of the computer, so I hope you'll let me know if you can hear it or not. And I will try to keep my voice up. So anyway, today is Parasha, which means to see or behold. And today is the 23rd of August, 2025. So before we start, I'd like to open this time in prayer. But Father, thank you again for the opportunity we have to spend this time with you, to have a day of rest and just learn from you again. I ask that you speak to our hearts, give us eyes to see and ears to hear. And I ask that you guide me so that everything I say will be guided by your Ruach HaKodesh, your Holy Spirit, just for your glory. I thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen. So Parasha comes from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 26, through chapter 16, verse 17. And it starts out with, "See, I set before you today a blessing and a curse." Deuteronomy 11:26. So, like I said, it means see or behold. And it's the very first word of our portion, which is a command to open our eyes and to pay attention. Okay? So it says, "See, I set before you today a blessing and curse." A blessing, if you listen to the mitzvot or the commandments of Adonai, your God, that I'm giving you today, and the curse, if you do not listen. So this is found in Deuteronomy 11, verses 26 to 28. Moses himself is preparing the Israelites to enter the land, promised land. He knows he's not going to go across, so he's doing everything he can to prepare them. He emphasizes that covenant relationship with Adonai is not a passive thing. It does require discernment, choice, and obedience. So, but there's also something deep going on. Re'eh is a singular verb, okay, even though Moses is speaking to the whole nation. So each person is being addressed directly in this case, even though he's speaking to all of them, like I said, but he's using the you, the singular you version of the word, okay, Re'eh, which means, like I said, see or behold. Every Israelite and every one of us today must choose blessing or curse in our lives. Life or death, light or darkness. This is an everyday choice. So the first part I want to talk about is the call to choose. Do we want to choose a blessing or do we want to choose a curse? Moses presents the Israelites with two paths. Blessing or beracha, when Israel obeys Adonai's mitzvot, like I said, which means commandments. Then we have the curse, which is kilala in Hebrew. And this happens when Israel turns away to idolatry or disobedience. It's not just about reward and punishment. Okay, this is not what he's trying to talk about. It's really about the relationship we have with Adonai. Blessing flows naturally from walking with the God of life, following his ways. And it's still true to today. I've given many examples of the time when the farmer I knew in Colorado who decided to follow God's ways in harvesting and planting, and he flourished extremely well. So what God gave back then, and no, we're not under the law for salvation. We will not bring us salvation. I've already said that, but it does bring blessing. God's ways bring blessing. So the curse is the fruit of cutting ourselves off from him. In Jewish thought, it kind of echoes Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, verse 15, where it says, everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is given. So our choice does matter. God gives us free will, yes, but that free will is meant to be for our good. God calls us to choose life. He desires for us to choose life. The second part I want to talk about is the danger of idolatry and false worship. Moses warns Israel to destroy any pagan altars, the Asherah poles, any shrines, etc., found in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 2 through 4. They must not worship Adonai in the way they choose. They have to do it his way. This is something I'd like to say to the believers of today who seem to think they can do whatever they want in the congregations. There are certain ways Yes, we have the freedom of just worship, and that's beautiful. And that's always good. But we're not just to live any way we want to. That's my point. Okay. So instead, Israel needs to come to the place Adonai will choose to cause his name to dwell. This is found in chapter 12, verse 5. This points to the future temple in Jerusalem and the dwelling place of his presence. Why is there so much strictness? Because worship does shape our identity. Okay. If Israel imitates the nations around them, or the nations they're supposed to displace, they will become like them. And we see it happen, right? It happens. If they cling to Adonai's covenant, they will be his holy people. So for us as Messianic believers, this kind of reminds us not to blend the worship of the God of Israel with the patterns of the world. Paul himself writes, do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. This is found in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. A third part I'd like to talk about is caring for the poor and the stranger. So there's a beautiful part of this parasha, and it's the emphasis on generosity and justice. Okay, first we have the Shemitah, or the sabbatical year, which releases debts. Also time to let the crops and the fields rest, etc., etc. This is found in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. Israel is commanded, there shall be no poor among you, in chapter 15, verse 4. And then the open hand versus the closed fist in chapter 15, verses 7 through 11. And rejoicing during the festivals with the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. This is found in chapter 16, verses 11 and 14. So basically, this is the heart of the Torah. Covenant faithfulness expressed in compassion, which, as we know, later on, once Israel is established, they move away from the compassion part. Yeshua echoes this when he also says, the poor you will always have with you, in Matthew chapter 26, verse 11. Not as an excuse, but as a reminder of our ongoing responsibility. James, who is a brother of Yeshua, also wrote, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress. This is found in James chapter 1, verse 27. So then we have the Messianic fulfillment in Yeshua himself, in Jesus. So everything in Parasha points us to the Messiah, as do all of the Parashot. So we have the blessing and curse. Yeshua bore the curse of the Torah on the tree in Galatians 3:13, so that in him we might receive the blessing of Abraham. Then we have the place of God's name. Yeshua said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up, in John 2:19. He is a living temple. We know that. It says in the book of Revelation that in the New Jerusalem, there will be no temple because he will be our temple. This is a dwelling place of God's presence, which is in Yeshua. Then we have generosity to the poor. Yeshua, though rich, he was the Son of God, became poor for our sake. Right? 2 Corinthians 8, verse 9. And he calls his disciples to radical generosity. Then we have the false prophet's warning in Deuteronomy 13. Yeshua warned about wolves in sheep's clothing in Matthew 7:15. So the true prophet leads people to love and obey Adonai, not away from him, which many so-called prophets are doing these days. So there's a personal challenge. What do you see? Moses says, Re, see, behold. And the question for us today is this: what are we seeing? Do we see life through the lens of blessing or through fear of curse? Do we see worship as a ritual or as intimacy with the living God? I don't know how many times I've been in congregations or different places, and even in the United States, where, they ask you to stand up when you're singing this and that. And I've been to places where you can choose whether you want to sit, stand, dance, whatever you want to do. And that's the kind of place I like, because when I was down and out, there'd be times when I just wanted to sit there and cry and worship. Even if I was singing and worshiping God, but I needed to cry while I was doing it. There was other times I was just rejoiceful, standing up, clapping, dancing, whatever. We all have our moments, but it's all worship. And it's beautiful because that's what he wants, intimacy, when we worship from our hearts. Do we see the poor and marginalized around us, or do we turn a blind eye? There's a lot of people out there who are homeless, and there's going to be a lot more in the near future. We know we can't help them all. We know that. But there is always somebody we can bless every day. It's always good to ask the Lord, hey, you show me who you want me to bless today. And he'll show you. Most importantly, do we see Yeshua as the one who embodies the Torah, calls us to walk in his footsteps? So in conclusion, Parashot calls us to open our eyes and make a choice. Choose blessing by walking in Yeshua's ways. Tear down the idols, whether external or in our hearts. All right, there are some physical idols people have in their homes and don't realize it. Okay, one time I had a miniature totem pole that was given to me by my grandfather. You know, he was not in Yeshua, but I had it for many, many years up until I was a young adult, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't worship it. I didn't pray to it. But at the same time, later on, I realized what the little totem pole was. That those are supposed to be so-called gods. I had no clue, so I threw it out. Okay, that was one thing. Like I said, I didn't worship it. I didn't pray to it. But at the same time, those things should not be in a house, not be in a believer's house. And there are other things out there, okay? Little statues of saints or Maria, Mary, or whatever. They should not be in our homes at all. Even if we're not praying to them, they shouldn't be there because they're just people, just like us. There can be other things, could be, like I said, could be idols. We need to rejoice in the festivals, the Moadim, welcoming the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. We need to be people of generosity, justice, and reflecting the kingdom of Adonai, of God. So as Moses later says in Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live. So Yeshua himself affirms, I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. John 10:10. I like that one part I really like the show Chosen. What people want to say about it, it's fine with me. I don't care, but I like it. And I just love the scenes where Yeshua is getting ready to get thrown off the cliff by the local rabbi of the town he grew up in, and of Nazareth. And he's getting ready to throw him off the cliff. And he tells him, that Yeshua is transgressing the Torah. And he turns to him and says, or the law of Moses. And Yeshua says, I am the law of Moses. So Yeshua is the Torah. He is the Torah in the flesh. And that's what's beautiful. So may we as a Messianic congregation see clearly, choose life, and walk in the blessing of our Messiah, Yeshua. There are study questions, which I will, like I usually do at the end. I will post them in the comment section because I'm not going to go through all of them because it's kind of long. And I'll let you take a look at those. They're very interesting. And so I just want to end this time with a small personal reflection. Where do you personally feel challenged to see more clearly in your walk with Yeshua? What idols, like I said, whether external practices or inward attitudes, need to be torn down in your life? How can you practice generosity this week in a way that reflects the heart of the Torah and the example of Yeshua? Thank you for joining us today. Shabbat Shalom.